what makes a project successful in the mining sector? We'll talk about this and what's next for giant mining with our next guest, Leo Hathaway, advisor to giant mining, and we'll be getting his outlook as well on the future of the mining sector. Welcome to the show, Leo. Good to see you. Welcome.
Good to see you, David.
Before we talk about the project itself, very interesting project, I want to talk about your experiences as a geologist leading up to right now and what you can tell the public about the field of geology. What makes a successful deposit economically feasible? Let's start with that.
Well, I mean, there's lots of things. Primarily the how cheaply you can get the metal out of the ground, which sounds simple, but it's a complicated formula. That depends on metallurgy, how deep it is, stripping ratio. What taxes and other economic burdens are placed on it by the jurisdiction it's in. So it's a whole host of things. But really, what you need, but one thing you do need is to actually be in a decent geological environment and have a good deposit that the geology is telling you is going to produce continuous and mineable mineralization.
Most of my audience is not professional geologists like yourself. So when we take a look at the map, probably, at least for me, I don't really know what I'm looking at. What are the key criteria that I should be looking at as an investor when given a set of geological surveys or a map or a study? Basically, the top three most important pieces of information that an investor should be watching out for when looking at a drill hole or a new deposit that hasn't been mined yet.
Yeah, I think grade, as I said, is one thing. How far away from the surface it is, which is an interplay with that as to when it might be an underground mine or an open pit mine, and also you want to look at how the results have been calculated and what the mineralization is, and how it might be turned into metal.
Giant mining is involved with copper. The gold space has been abuzz with the concept of peak gold, meaning that the ounces produced of gold have peaked in production volume. That's a theory. I'll let you address that first of all. But is the copper industry also facing a similar phenomenon?
Yeah. So I think what you're referring to is that the production is getting harder and is getting more expensive, which
yes.
is true across a whole range of minerals at this point. It's an interesting moment where we keep consuming more minerals and we found everything that's close to surface and makes sense economically. So they're generally getting deeper and they're getting harder to extract, and we're having to go to more out of the way places, in more high risk jurisdictions to get them. So it's that's why we're seeing such high metals prices. When I started out, copper was 50 or 60 cents. Now it's above $3, which we never thought we'd see. Gold's $3,500, which is a high and unthinkable. So it's kind of it's a new world, metals price and metals supply wise, but also with the geopolitical tensions that are going on right now, that also adds another dimension to it, where with tariffs and embargoes and things like that, then you might see constricted supply and price spikes going forward.
Sorry, why are we getting price spikes specifically because of geopolitical tensions? Is it because of supply chain issues, or is it because
so essentially supply chain issues? So for example, in the copper space, there's some very big mines that if something happens, in Chile, for example, occasionally they have mine strikes, and that causes a shortage in production, and then there's a price spike. So some people stockpile metals, so there's a bit of a buffer built in. But if those stockpiles dwindle, then you could see those kind of things. And that's in the context of gold, that's central banks, I guess, are the other unknown factor. So there's lots of factors, but we're definitely in a new environment with some record prices in terms of metals.
What do you think the copper mining industry needs to do to overcome this supply deficit gap that people are talking about in the future, meaning we're going to have to get a huge deficit because, like you said, it's getting harder to mine copper and the demand for copper will continue to increase.
Well, to be honest with you, this is what makes the fundamentals of copper so attractive because there isn't a good substitute metal for 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 metal wires and conducting electricity. And of course, thin metal wires are what's wound around a rotor or a to generate electricity, and also to make electricity and drive car windows and that kind of thing. So we're seeing more electrification. Nothing can really substitute because it's malleable and it's very conductive. So the next metal that can is aluminum, and that's not really comparable. So on the supply side, there's nothing that can substitute in, and the big deposits are getting harder to find, and demand keeps going up with electrification and population growth and building. So it's to see copper going anywhere else other than up is very difficult for me, at least.
Do you see the technology behind exploration and extraction improving such that we're going to get a fracking moment for copper, and then this deficit issue will no longer be a concern?
Well, in terms of technology for finding copper, that's been huge, and there's been big leaps forward in exploration. In terms of extraction, there was that moment in the 60s where they discovered how to leach and electrically get copper out of the solutions they leached, SXEW, that process is called, which unlocked a lot of copper deposits and lower prices then. The next one is probably a leaching, and that's already kind of underway a little bit, better leaching technologies. But it's not going to be a transformational moment. It's just going to help with the demand rather than unlock a massive supply. Is the way I think of it.
You mentioned finding copper is making advancements here. Can you explain the technology?
Yeah, so Robert Friedland's Idaho group has got a really powerful geophysics tool called Typhoon, where they put a lot of energy into the ground and they can see deeper. Because of that, some of the geochemical techniques are way better, where you can take samples at surface and detect extremely low levels of elements that tell you there might be something below. And also in terms of extraction, mining techniques in deep underground mines are getting cheaper. Electrification of underground vehicles is better. And eventually, you're going to see mines that don't have any people in them, which is obviously going to make things much cheaper because stopping people hurting themselves is a big cost.
Absolutely. Well, how is AI going to change the space?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I don't know, but I think it'll help operations. It can make operations a lot more efficient. To my knowledge, there's been no big discovery that AI has been credited with in terms of exploration. So I think that's still an open question.
What generally makes a deposit unique or worthy of exploration? And we'll tie this to Majuba Hill.
Well, I think you need to geologically understand what's going on and what you're looking for, and make sure it's been tested properly. And in terms of what you look for, in terms of the way these things form, often you want a deposit to be utilizing very deep structures, because essentially the metals come from the mantle. So you want a deep structure that is going to bring the metals close enough to surface to mine them. And you also want that structure to be long-lived enough that it can kind of have multiple events and concentrate the metals enough to get to economic levels.
Okay. And Majuba Hill, tell us about that, where it's located and what makes that unique.
Yeah, it's in Nevada, not far from Elko. Nevada is, in my view, probably the premier mining district in the world. It's in an area where there's no people, which is good for mining, but near enough to mining centers where there's people who could easily run a mine there. Nevada's just a great place to mine. No high rainfall, low cost to mine, a mining friendly jurisdiction, historical mining jurisdiction. Everyone's, very happy with mining there. So, so it's good from that point of view. Nevada's really primarily known as a gold district. Um, but Majuba is in terms of the copper deposits in Nevada, Majuba kind of caught my attention because it's not it's not really on a known trend. So it's always in geology the ones that kind of break the rules or don't do what is expected that are interesting and often bring surprises and often in a good way. Um, so that's in terms of what, and it sits on a major. The other thing is it sits on a major structure in Nevada, and the age dating is very interesting. It indicates the system's been very long lived and had multiple events.
Okay. What separates this copper porphyry from other that you've worked with globally, given your long background as an engineer and a geologist, rather? You've certainly worked on several different projects.
Yeah, it's well, the as I alluded to, the age dating has it shows that there's been three different porphyry events there, so three different mineralizing events, events um, over more than 100 million years. So that tells me there's a deep structure tapping deep into the Earth's crust there. That is that's one very favorable thing. It's got a lot of copper there, and it's also got other minerals like tin, which just tells you it's kind of a fertile system. And it hasn't seen it's seen some drilling, but it hadn't um, seen much deep drilling. And there's still areas that I didn't think had been kind of properly tested, and some ideas that hadn't been properly tested. So that's an opportunity as far as I see it.
In Nevada, it's been ranked as one of the top mining jurisdictions in the world, not just for copper, but also for gold. Tell us why Nevada in particular is so highly ranked by many prestigious institutions like the Fraser Institute, for example.
Yeah, it's really it's just got a mining culture going right back to the the original days of the Wild West. It's got and because of that, there's not really any opposition to mining there from people who live there. It's a big part. It's a big part of the economy. It's a desert environment, so in infrastructure is easy. There's no washouts, high rainfall, any of that kind of stuff. There's enough people there, but not too many people there, so you don't upset people by mining. Rail, all those kind of ways to get material out is there, so communications are good, and also taxes because the state wants to encourage mining. Taxes and royalties and that kind of thing are low. So all of those reasons.
Majuba Hill, tell us about the infrastructure surrounding Majuba Hill and what makes this particularly attractive for an investor.
It's on a trend that there's a major road. I should know because I've driven along it, but I think about 15 kilometers from the project. There's a rail link not too far away as well. If you wanted to build a mine, I don't really see there be any issues doing it there from what I've seen. So it's got everything going from it from that point of view.
Okay, but can you be more specific in terms of access to roads and power lines that maybe a copper mine in Peru or South America or West Africa may not have access to? Like, tell us about the major differences and why investors can expect maybe a premium built into the price because of that.
Yeah, so I've worked a lot in South America, and often you have big mines that are 10,000 feet or higher up. You have to get, often with a copper mine, depending on what you're producing, you might be producing a copper concentrate, which is a pretty high volume of material and heavy. So you need a road or you need a rail link, or you have to build a pipeline, all of which means you have a lot of cost up front. And if you have a lot of cost up front from mine, that's bad because you have to, you have to pay it off through cash flow when you come into production. So nowadays you're seeing it's common to see mines with multi-billion-dollar initial capitals. And that's a big burden on the mine until investors start actually seeing some money back in their pocket. So, you might be looking at multiple years. If you put money in, you might be looking for multiple years before you actually start making a profit. And that's challenging for investors. So that's a big that cuts down on the cost of finance a mine and all sorts of things.
Let's talk about the geology of Majuba Hill itself. Well, first of all, comment on the size and scope and then the grade.
In terms of size, they have fairly good surface. There's been many people work there since, well, there's historic workings there, but in a meaningful way, probably I think it's the early 70s. There's a big geochemical footprint there, like multiple square kilometers, and a big geophysical footprint. And they've made kind of big advances in understanding those. So that tells you there's a large system there. And from a grade point of view, there's some very high grade breccias there. There's some old workings that have exploited the high grade. And those haven't really been defined by drilling. Giant's trying to do that right now, but that's a very attractive target because of the grade. There's also what's called an enrichment blanket, which means a level of minerals that are leachable, which is a much cheaper way of getting the copper out. So you have kind of this upper level that could be leachable. Then you have high grade breccias, which are kind of like broken areas of like a vent from a volcano, essentially, that are high grade and not properly defined. And then from the dating work that's been done, you have a porphyry. You have 3 different porphyry events, 2 of which have been found by drilling, but a third one of which hasn't. And that's kind of an intriguing, deeper target that could be a new discovery. So there's 3 different types of target, I would say, all of them interesting, and they haven't been properly figured out yet.
All right. And then finally, why is this a good time to be looking at copper mines in general for an investor?
Well, I think because of the fundamentals that we talked about, that I don't see a way the copper price is going down. It's really a question of, how high and when.
Yeah.
So, and in terms of, like I say, in terms of jurisdictions in America, probably and especially in Nevada, under the current administration, it's a great time. Plus, you have many a great market for buying copper in the US as well. So that's why I think in terms of jurisdiction, you couldn't be better placed.
Thank you very much, Leo. We'll put the link to the website down below so people can learn more about giant mining there. Appreciate it, Leo. Speaking again soon. Take care.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.